Hi, I'm Linda, and this is No Frills ASMR America's 250th celebration edition. Dun, 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 dun. I thought we could talk about, we will talk about what's going on right now and why there's some controversy. But before that, I wanted to talk about 1976, which was the country's bicentennial. And it's funny because I realized I was only 5 years old, but I have these crystal clear memories of that time period. I was in kindergarten, I was in the Brownies, and there was a big, big parade and party in Clawson, Michigan. And we didn't live in Clawson, but our church was in Troy. Our church was in Clawson, kind of near Troy, Michigan. So we went to the parade. It's possible, and I'd have to ask her, I kind of think maybe my sister marched with the Girl Scouts in the parade, or maybe my brother marched with the Boy Scouts. But I don't think I marched. I have a pretty vivid memory of being in the parking lot of a bank. That was sort of near the Taco Bell. Anyway, and the parade went I can't remember the names of the mile roads. I think this was maybe Crooks, and then maybe this is 13 Mile. I can't remember. And then it comes up and turns here, and it ends here somewhere, and there's a park, and I think it's called Clawson Park. And at the park, they had a bandstand, and they had metal bleachers set up that I have a very vivid memory of, and all these food and games, and it was awesome. And we all had, as I recall, these white styrofoam hats, and they had a red, white, and blue banner thing on them. And so that was the day of the parade, so probably July 4th, 1976. But leading up to that, our brownie troop, I think we went to Greenfield Village, and there they had all these reenactors and just all kinds of events going on for the bicentennial. And you brought a postcard, and you could write it to yourself if you wanted, and then you'd get it stamped at the post office at Greenfield Village, and it would be stamped with a bicentennial, stamp mark. And that was very exciting. You waited in line, and they just had all sorts of commemorative. And I did a whole video on Greenfield Village in Detroit, if you're curious. It's a fascinating place. There's a village and a museum, and it's if you're ever in Detroit, it's totally worth going to. Yeah, I did a whole video on that. You can check that out. Just look up Greenfield Village, No Frills ASMR. Anyway, but I have all these memories of, I feel like reenactors came to the school maybe, and we did all these projects leading up to the big bicentennial. And maybe I'm wrong, I don't know, but I feel like the thing that was completely different about that event compared to the one we have right now is that it was completely not about elections and nonpartisan. It was just everybody coming together. People painted the fire hydrants to look like the American flag or Betsy Ross. Oh my God, Betsy Ross was a big deal. I remember Betsy Ross just being a big deal. My sister even had a music box that was a rocking chair with Betsy Ross on it making the flag, and it played I don't remember, maybe Stars and Stripes for her, I'm not sure. Oh yeah, and all the music was Sosa. Anyway, but yeah, very nonpartisan. And at the time, we had President Gerald Ford, who was a Republican. He took over after Nixon left office, and he made speeches that were nonpartisan at that time. Now, I did have to look that up because I was too young to remember any of that, honestly. What I do remember, and I'm sorry if this is This is just a memory. Sorry if this is not right or controversial or anything like that. But I remember that in the parade, there were veterans, and I think in 1976, there were quite a few veterans from World War One, World War Two, Korea, and the Vietnam War, and probably others. But for some reason, I remember first the World War One being like, oh my gosh, they're so old. Like, they're so old. And I'm trying to think, that's right? They could have been. I think there were. And then the Vietnam veterans, I remember that because this is a weird memory for a 5-year-old. I feel like people like were cheering them all, but when they came through, people really applauded the Vietnam veterans. And I think that was the beginning of a change in feeling, or a recognition that the men who fought in Vietnam had been sort of, I don't know, I'd have to look into this more, but sort of ignored upon their return. And a lot of them were homeless and stuff. And so they had some in wheelchairs, some guys in wheelchairs, and some guys were marching. And I feel like there was emotion in that. Maybe that's a doctored memory in my memory. I don't know. You know what I mean? Anyway, but that I have this memory of that. And I have a memory of buttons. And we could go to the stand and you'd make buttons, and then you draw like the American flag or whatever, and so in 1976, and you made buttons and you put it on your styrofoam hat. If you wanted, you could put your button on there. And then we stayed late and saw the fireworks. All very exciting. Okay, so here's what's going on with this one, and why maybe, and I don't know, maybe you're not hearing it, but I think we've all heard a little bit about a feeling of that this has become a partisan event, which I really, really, really wish for our country that it was not a partisan event, because having something that brings us all together, which I think the World Cup is kind of doing, maybe, but I just wish it was that, you know what I'm saying? So what happened was, it started in 2016, that a nonpartisan group started what they call America 250. And this was a commission started by Congress in 2016, and they were going to run like this nonpartisan national commemoration of the US 250. And they were putting money aside for this event. Well, then I guess President Trump looked at it and felt that the event wasn't grand enough, wasn't enough. So he started Freedom 250. So they're two kind of different events. And this is where some of the confusion lies. And what you may have heard about was the Freedom 250 concert that they announced all these people who were going to perform, and people got mad about it. And it was because, as my understanding is, there was some confusion over whether it was, some of the performers felt, I'm just performing in celebration of the 250. But that what some would say, and I think President Trump himself would say, that Freedom 250 is, and he kind of, I'll be honest, he said this yesterday, it's going to be the biggest Trump rally in his ever. And so some artists who felt like they were doing a nonpartisan event realized they were doing a partisan event, and they pulled out. So that's what that controversy was. And Freedom 250 is what, was the organization behind the UFC fight on the White House lawn. Now that UFC fight, it was only shown on, what's the network? It was streamed on, was it Paramount Plus? And then they had like advertising. So I'm assuming that was mostly paid for by the streaming service. There was lots of like crypto advertising and, I don't know what, energy drinks or something on it. And then also the UFC. I assume that's mostly how that was paid for, but I don't know. I didn't try to figure that out. But this is where the problem lies, is that the Freedom 250 has become Trump centric. And that's why people are feeling like, do they want to go to Washington, D.C. to see what will be a Guinness World Record firework display? They're planning on shooting off 850 shells. I'm sorry, 850,000 shells from like 10 different sites. It's going to be crazy. My sister actually is going to be there. But Trump is saying it's a Trump rally, and he'll be speaking in front of Lincoln Memorial tomorrow night. And he says, it's by the way, it's over 100 degrees and humid. And he says he's going to speak for over 40 minutes to prove that he can, which it's hot, man. It's hot. But, and that is moving the fireworks back or up, I guess, until 11 p.m. And then it's supposed to be like the longest firework. Why'd I put a B? The longest firework display ever, I think. So it's going to be like a 40-minute display at 11 p.m. instead of normally it's at 9 or 10. Would you say 10? Probably. But so that's what this is what's going on. So some people feel like this has been turned into a partisan event when it really shouldn't be. But America 250 is holding events around the country. They've helped to like plan and fund firework displays all around the country. And honestly, in my mind, I love the country. I would just ignore the partisan of it, I think, and try to just enjoy it and celebrate. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with a light from above. Anyway, so I'm up here I'm going to go hang my American flag up. I love this flag. It has these stitched stars. It has the stitched stripes. I did a whole video on the American flag and what it all means. I can't remember if that was the same video or a separate one about how to fold your American flag for storage. I'm actually keeping mine on the pole lately, and I have it hung in my basement. So I should do a video in front of my flag. I probably get a lot of views. Anyway, the other issue that's going on here is there are members of the America 250 committee who are accusing, what's the word I'm looking for? Not proving, but accusing the Freedom 250 of pulling money that was meant for America 250 to put towards the Freedom 250, and they are using it as a Trump and vis-a-vis Republican talking, commercial basically for them. And so that's another thing that's going on. Though, the other events that they're planning besides that UFC fight, the one is, remember when Trump announced, I forget what they're calling it, but they're going to bring in like high school students, athletes from all over to do different events and come up with the greatest athlete or something. My son sent me that when it happened. He's like, this sounds pretty cool. And I sent him back, Katniss going. Made me think of that. But anyway, so that's kind of interesting. And then I think there's also like I don't know if it's NASCAR or what, but race around DC they're going to have. That's interesting. There used to be one in Detroit. In fact, there probably still is. The Detroit Grand Prix. That wasn't NASCAR though. That's a Formula One race. used to go to that when I was a kid. Anyway, well, let me know what you think of it all or not. Don't yell at me. I don't need it. I don't care. I don't care. But yeah, so I'm going to go hang my flag up. I'm going to a big fireworks display is the plan tomorrow night. They're going to have bands and fireworks. I would go to the fireworks in my hometown. But the thing that I don't like, we have a great firework display. It's kind of the same every year, but it's pretty good. But they don't play any music, and I really want the you need to have some good old-fashioned American big symphony band, I don't know, music playing. And I don't mean the new stuff. I don't mean like, the Lee Greenwood. I mean like the old with the big snare drum. That's what I want to hear. Do you know what I'm talking about? Maybe I'll try to make a playlist on Spotify so everybody can. It's funny because when I'm with my dad, he has Alzheimer's, but I've been with him around 4th of July a few times recently, but I put on all that kind of music in the car, and he'll sit there and conduct, and we sit there and go, dun, dun, dun. Why is that the only one I can think of? I think that's Stars and Stripes Forever. Go look it up. It's a good one. Anyway. All right. Well, that's all I have to say about that. I hope you all have a wonderful 4th of July. And celebrate it in any way you feel, whether that's eating a hot dog or a hamburger, or just sitting with your feet in a kiddie pool. Or I'll tell you what a hillbilly I am. I have a plastic bucket because I couldn't find a kiddie pool. So I have a plastic bucket. It's deep. And I fill it with water from the hose and put my feet in it and sit in my chair and have a mojito. Anyway, yep. It's a weird time. It's a weird time in our country. Everything's gotta be political. Just gotta have some fun sometimes. Alright, guys. I don't know what I'll do with this video.